Hey, man, sometimes we go local. When people go national, sometimes we invite them back, have conversations. I'm in here. It's the Mr. Peter Parker Show on Go 95.3. What a legend, man. My buddy, my friend, Julian Murray. How are you?
I'm good, man. 10 years.
Yeah,
10
man.
years.
Did my first photo shoot in Minneapolis back in the day when I worked for B96. You were doing all the local artists. Everybody was like, this is the guy. He's doing the really dope photos. You were getting up early in the morning doing photo shoots, eating Wendy's, wilding out 8, 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
We would link up and do some really cool creative photo shoots, but you worked with everybody out here. Like, you were the guy, the go-to guy from, man, what, 06, 7, 8, nonstop.
Yeah, it started all back before I did photography. It's been 10 years now.
Yeah.
I was working at a grocery store for 6 years.
Yeah.
There's no rhyme or reason to why I got into photography other than my favorite photographer is Jonathan Mannion. He's
amazing.
Everything.
He did every album cover, like everything, Wu-Tang, everything, like living legend, yeah.
Correct, yeah. So 18, 19, I'm flipping through CD covers, and I'm like, man, this is cool.
Yeah.
So I started saving up money, bought a Canon for $1,000 back then.
Yeah.
Cameras, I mean,
yeah.
Cameras now are like, they're like iPhones. They come out every year. But back then it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I bought that, and I started taking pictures, just like family members, just to get, you know, the portraits, figure out lighting and all that.
Yeah.
But what really happened was when I started wanting to get into the music thing and seeing all the different lighting and all that, I needed to be like, get an apprentice kind of job.
Yeah, like to figure it out, like the exact details, because you didn't go to school for it.
Didn't go to school for it. And
Okay.
I'm one of those people that I can't sit down and read a book or a manual to figure it out. I got to like watch it be done.
Yeah.
So luckily, that first year I was picked up by Mike from Infusion Photo, and I basically owe that guy my whole career.
Yeah.
He was shooting for Minnesota Finest back then, big entertainment company.
Yeah, I remember them.
He brought me on and started paying me right away to run video for him, just a video camera while he's shooting the models and all that.
Yeah.
And so he just taught me like lighting, and not by showing me how to do it. I just watched him, like I said.
Yeah.
And he said to me, if you can figure out your natural lighting and combine it with studio lighting outside, you're going to be fantastic because you already got the ideas.
Yeah.
You already got the composition and all that.
Yeah.
So shout out to Money Mike. I owe him a lot.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
A little bit of advice went a very, very long way and got you started, man.
Correct.
Amazing career out here in the Twin Cities. Then I remember about 2010 when the radio station ended, I was kind of hanging out in town. I remember you came down to Elixir one time and we were hanging out, and he's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to get out of town? I'm like, what are you going to do?
Yeah,
like,
I remember
And he's
that.
like, I'm going to LA. And you came to me and you were like, and you bigged me up like, yo, you got to go do something. You can't just hang out in Minnesota. Like, you got to go and do something big. And you kind of like put a battery in my back, like, yo, you can't just sit around. And then I remember you went to LA, then I went to Washington, D.C., and you were in LA for a little bit.
Yeah,
You did a bunch of stuff. You did like some stuff with the Source magazine, I remember.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, talk about that.
So the Minneapolis career, 5 years here, worked with Minnesota Finest. They kind of launched me. Also, when I started getting into the local hip-hop scene,
Yeah.
I had shot almost everybody.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of that transition, like I need to do something different. And my wife, Lacey, kind of was the final one that said, let's try L.A. And back then, that was the time when people like Rocky were all moving to L.A. and all that.
The migration had just begun. There's a second wave now with guys like Bobby Raps and Mod Sun and them, but the original first few were going out there, I remember.
Correct, yeah. So Auburn is actually a local artist that got signed
I remember
to Beluga
Auburn.
Heights.
I remember Auburn, yeah.
Correct. So Auburn said, I'll hook you up with a couple artists out here if you do my photos in L.A. So we booked a 1-week trip to L.A., linked up with Ski, local.
The man.
Yep. Same day we shot Auburn, we shot Man, and we shot Jason Derulo.
I remember Man. Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool. So this is like 2010.
2009. So then we came
Okay.
back from that trip.
Yeah.
And then we were all hyped up. We were like, oh, man, this is great.
We could do this.
Derulo blew up the next week.
Right.
So we're like, all right, let's start looking into it. And so my buddy Tom, I've never met him in person. He's a photographer in New York, shoots XXL covers, all that. He said, well, I can get you plugged into the Source in LA. And I was like, done.
Great.
So we packed up our car, sold everything, drove out there, and we get there. The day we get to LA, the Source calls, and they go, we need you to shoot Ludacris tomorrow. And I was like, okay, where? And they go, you got to figure it out. And it's like 11 o'clock at night. And I say, all right, well, I got this idea. It'd be cool to shoot him downtown LA because they just have tons of stores lined up.
Yeah.
Getting like tailored on the street for a suit, you know, is just like the vision I had.
Yeah.
And the source goes, yeah, that's cool, but we're not paying to get police security and all that. You got to figure it out. And I was like, I just moved here. I don't know anybody that owns a studio, nothing.
Yeah.
So they were like, all right, we'll get somebody else to do it.
Oh.
The first night we were there.
You had Luda as you're coming. Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, we just blew it.
Oh.
So 2 weeks goes by, and we're shooting local artists and all that. And they call back, and they go, all right, tomorrow you got to do photos of Cheech and Chong in Malibu, and then you got to go shoot Cypress Hill. And I was like, oh, boy.
Wow.
So, yeah, so we got up, and we drove out to Malibu, went to Cheech's house. He's got this huge crib right on the beach.
Yeah.
And pull up. Tommy Chong looks at me, and he goes, are you old enough to take pictures?
Yeah, because even you look young now. You're like, you know, in your late 20s. But back a couple years ago, dude, you look like a 14-year-old. It was like this child with a camera.
I can't. I'll never get away from it.
You got good facial hair now.
Well, this is just the I'm not growing a beard. I just don't want to shave.
That's like the Cinco de Drinko after party. This is it. Yeah. You were partying last night, and then this is the after effects. Okay, yeah.
So that was the transition to LA, just like the artists from Minnesota that we had the connections with, and then getting the source connections.
Yeah.
But back in Minnesota, like the crazy thing was with how big social media is now.
Yeah.
MySpace is what also kind of blew me up.
Yes.
Because that's when it was so big. People would add you, and that's how I was getting all my work. So
most definitely.
I've been doing this for 10 years, and I'm still doing it. And you would have told me 10 years ago that you'd be still relevant. Oh, man, I don't think I would have believed it.
Yeah.
But it's a hustle, though. I mean,
I know. You know. Yeah, dude, telling me, man. And you've moved a couple of times. So you went to L.A., did that for a little while. Then you guys migrated to Vegas.
Correct.
And that's where you currently are.
Still in Vegas. Great city.
Yeah.
L.A., love working with artists and everything. It just, for me, it didn't fit my personality, the traffic, the people. So
Midwest guy. You wanted something real. But it was that book, though. It was that Tattoos and Tentacles book that was like after you did that while you were in L.A.?
We shot a series of it. We shot 5 girls just to put out as a series and sell prints. And this guy, Patrick Whalen, he's in the music industry. He's from Minnesota, too, so he was another connection out there. We go to his house in the Hollywood Hills, and he is flipping through the website because he wanted me to shoot a couple artists, and he's like, oh, your music stuff's great. And then he clicks on the Tattoos and Tentacles series, and he's just like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah.
You should literally sell these as prints in the arts district downtown.
Yeah.
And we'd had no idea of a book at that point.
Yeah.
So then once we started selling it and making money on the prints, we were like, well, let's do a series out of it. And so at that time, I knew I wasn't going to want to live in L.A., and so we had kind of looked at Vegas as a transition city.
Yeah.
And it ended up working out because we were able to finish the book between shooting in L.A., Vegas, and even like Phoenix market, like because there's tattoo culture's really big out west.
Most definitely, man.
And the book ended up doing $30,000, which sounds great, but I was living off of it, trying to get the book done. So in the end, it was like a starving artist thing, and now I know how music artists are with their living off their music.
Difficult. It can be very difficult. Challenging.
But it was a great experience. Very odd book, but it turned out cool.
No, it was cool. You guys always had an eclectic side. I've watched what you and Lacey do on social media, and you have a traditional side, and you guys do like the kind of portraits and artist stuff. But then I go, no, you guys are kind of freaky too, man. I see some creative stuff. You know what I mean? Eclectic stuff.
Yeah.
I know you have like a PDF file, this whole thing with all these pictures of your career and things that you've done in the Cheech and Chong stuff and the Cypress Hill, old school pictures of me with no facial hair. Very, very cool. Like everybody from the Twin Cities from that era. Where can people see this stuff?
So it's going to be called 10 Years of Portraits. It's going to be an online book for free, putting it out for free. People can buy a hard copy online as well. But it's everything from the past 10 years it's just a mixture of fashion, music, even portraits of our grandparents that it's just looking back at 10 years, it's like, how do you even get this into a book? So it's gonna be a lot of pages, but looking back at it for me is like, wow, I have done a lot.
Yeah.
And it's just been like, there's a lot of great photos in there. Anything from like we were talking about, like Mod San.
Yeah, early
Mod San, and watch how not even how my career's evolved, but how your career's evolved, Rocky's career's evolved.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. What
you shot a lot of famous people, man. Like a lot of people early in their careers too, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite photo shoot?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's from the music side. I always like people that, like you get it. When we go do a shoot, we're going to shoot a bunch. It's not like, okay, here's the shot we're getting.
And we're out of here. Yeah,
so it's like, I would say probably my favorite artist locally that I've ever worked with, Muja Messiah.
The man.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the...
I saw the one in the portfolio with him with like the cigar, and he looks like he's like in the desert or something. Like crazy. He's a very, very, very creative, interesting person.
Yeah, and just his own, swag and all that. I mean, his wardrobe is always
the man.
Crazy. So locally, I'd say Muja Messiah. One of my other favorite shoots was out in L.A. Freddie Gibbs.
Yeah, the man.
He goes, meet me at this park. And it was the same thing as Muja, where we just hopped around all day and shot some great stuff. But, I'm looking at him, listening to his music, and then he pulls up and he's got his little dog with him. And he goes, "Hey, I'm Freddie. This is Smokey." And it was just like, different vibe.
But the music is definitely hardcore, and you meet this guy, and he's a very nice guy.
Yeah.
He's very cool.
Yeah. So it's stuff like that's awesome. A lot of good fashion stuff in that book.
Yeah.
I like to just go out and shoot what I want to shoot. So that's why I never really got into the big company shoots where you got 5 art directors, all this.
Yeah.
I just like to create the vision.
You stayed independent. You don't work corporate stuff as much. You really do independent, freelance. You move around, whatever the situation is.
Yeah, totally.
Cool, man.
Yeah. And it's at the end of the day, I mean, like, if you're a creative, you got to, like, have your own vision. I don't want to be told by 5 other people this is how it should look.
Right. 100%.
I like input too, but,
Right. But you're the reason that this stuff is happening. You should be taking the lead on a lot of it. What's next for you? I know that you have, I mean, when you hit that 10-year mark, it's kind of like a forever thing. If you can make it to 10, you're not going to be out of this. So I see you taking pictures for a very long time. What's next? Where do you see yourself?
Well, it's funny you say that, because even right before I started doing it and bought that camera 10 years ago, there were people that said, do not get into the photography industry. And like I said, 10 years has gone by, and I've done this. That's all I've done.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to do it. So out in Vegas, what I would love to do is Raiders are coming to town.
Yeah.
Hockey's coming.
Yeah.
So we're going to be there for I'd say good 5 years, maybe even longer.
Do you see yourself coming back?
Oh, that's the question we ask every year.
You guys miss it?
I miss it. Yeah. I miss it. But the winter's brutal,
Yeah, it wasn't that bad this year.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad.
But the hard thing about what I had problems with here with my career was once the winter hits, you're stuck in the studio
100%.
on backdrops. So I like to, a lot of my stuff I like to do outdoors and all that.
Most definitely.
So in Vegas, my goal is to do 1 creative shoot a week just to put it out there online.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I'd like to get into that local celebrity Vegas market. Like Floyd, he's got a ton of new fighters coming out on the money team.
Yeah.
So I'd like to work with fighters. UFC's getting super big and popular. They just built this massive, massive building out there.
Yeah.
So I'd like to get into shooting fighters, just little local celebrity stuff, because there's so many people coming through the city and all that.
Crazy, man.
Yeah, I mean, we love Vegas, and we'll be there for a bit.
What's your favorite part about photography? You seems like you're very passionate about it, and I've seen you're personally, your confidence and your personality has really came out in the last 10 years. You were very quiet when I first met you, and I can see you maturing as an adult and as a man. What's the passion that keeps you coming back to this?
It's the images. It's really a lot of times I can see, if it's a concepted portrait shoot, I can see the image in my head before we even shoot.
Yeah.
And so, like, making the image come alive and then seeing it when it's done.
So you got it in your head, and then you're trying to execute that with a camera.
Correct.
Wow.
And then also, if we're just jumping around town like I do with a lot of local artists, as you know.
Yeah.
It's just like, if the connection's right between me and the artist and they're cool to shoot, it's just like hanging out, doing what you love.
Yeah.
And making good images. And then once you get that final product done and putting it out there and people like it, I mean, it's amazing. And that's why, I'm so glad I didn't listen to those people 10 years ago.
Too. People told me not to get into this, and I was like, I got some different plans.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Julian Murray, congratulations. If people want to see your work, they want to connect with you on social media, websites, whatever, how do they reach out?
My social media is just jmurphoto. Website's julianmurrayphoto.com. That's where the book will be released for free, and it'll also have a link if you actually want a hard copy, and we'll mail it to you.
Amazing. Congratulations. When you come back in August, we have to take some pictures.
Sounds good.
Yeah, my man. I appreciate you. My man.
Thanks, Parker.